everyone, and welcome to the Love Like Crazy podcast. We're your hosts, Jay and Stacey Coleman, and we have a wonderful episode for you today. We have a special guest with us now that we're in season 2, and she is the founder of the Life of a Single Mom Ministries. She's an author and speaker and a single parent advocate, and she is my dear friend, Jennifer Maggio. So Jennifer, we are so glad to have you today.
I'm so excited to be here.
And we're here in our home studio. This is a new adventure for us, and you're one of our first guests. So
It's beautiful in here.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you were able to join us. I know that in past years we've had a lot of experience together, like ministering. You've been to our Journey Girls events and spoken, and we've talked a lot about Single Moms Ministry, and we've launched a Single Moms Life group within our church. And so I just would like our listeners to hear about your personal experience and what led you to this type of ministry.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, first of all, I just want to say excited to have you with us today, because it's been a blessing to us to be able to watch your ministry grow and watch it thrive. I know it's been a blessing to so many moms at our church, but it's been throughout our city, our state, the nation. And it's just been a blessing to watch God do everything he's done through your ministry and your willingness to step out and minister to single moms. So like Stacey said, just, tell us a little bit about you, about your story, and let our listeners know what's going on in the life of Jennifer Maggio.
Well, that's a loaded question, but I often say that I knew what a single parent was before I actually knew what a single parent was. My mother was killed when I was very young, about 17 months old, and so my dad was a single dad, and so that journey of having one parent in the home was not something that was unusual for me. And my dad was devastated. His wife was 32 years old when she passed away and left twin babies behind, my sister and I. And so he used alcohol and women to really deal with that trauma. My dad married a total of 6 times, had lots of girlfriends in between and during those marriages. And so my home was always really a revolving door. In fact, it's interesting because I can remember every time he remarried, we were told to call that new woman mom, and we were never permitted to talk about the prior mom. And so there was just all this kind of dysfunction from the time I was tiny, and thought that it was normal. And then he also was an alcoholic. And I look back now, of course, as an adult, and really can see all of the pain. I had a brother that died before my mother was killed. And so I think my dad just really didn't know what to do with all the pain.
So he had faced a lot of trauma from the get-go.
Oh, and he had been a deacon in the local church for 20 years. And so this dichotomy of serving the Lord and understanding a relationship with the Lord and the importance of that, but then also not understanding how a good God could take your wife and child. And I think he suffered for a long time. And of course, this was many decades ago. And so there weren't resources and podcasts and conversations taking place.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't talk about those things, especially in the church.
Oh, certainly not. You just needed to, keep it all together. And so
that had to be terribly confusing as a child.
Oh, for sure. And so, I had these moms coming in and out. We moved every time he remarried. So most people had no idea what our history was. And then, also kind of during the same time began being sexually assaulted at about 3 years old, and went through 10 years of extreme abuse. My dad did not know about the abuse, but there were step relatives and there were neighbors and family friends. And so there were many abusers in my life over a decade. And so even wrestling with that and the abnormality of sexual assault, and there was physical abuse by stepmothers and malnourishment and verbal assault. And so really, this story was kind of morphing from the time that I was about 2 to 3 years old of just trauma and survival. And so I was an overperformer in school, straight A student, class president, you name it. And I was looking to achieve it, looking for value. We went to church every single Sunday, which I know that there will be listeners out there that can relate to this. We're in church every Sunday, and I think you should be, but also I often thought if people had any idea how dysfunctional and how our home really was, if they really had any idea who my parents really were,
Right.
they would run us out of this
Right.
place.
So you go to church on Sunday morning and put on your happy face, pretend like everything's fine, and all of this is going on within the home, and you're just on the inside, the turmoil.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
And we had the family picture hanging in the living room with whoever the new mom was. And I can remember the
my
pastors, this was back in the day when pastors would visit on Tuesdays and that kind of thing. And I can remember sitting and having dinner with pastors and thinking they have no idea, how horrible it is. And of course, I'm a child, so I'm not even processing.
You can't even speak up, right?
Yeah.
So as a kid, are you thinking like, why you're in this situation, like we're living a lie?
Or
did you
think it was normal?
Absolutely. I thought it was normal.
Okay.
I thought that most people had something. And ours may be more, but that everybody was dealing with their things. And that there was a facade, which of course later caused me to wrestle quite a bit with my relationship with the Lord of what that meant to be in relationship with Him with all of the secrecy. And so wound up at 13 years old, I began having sex outside of marriage, looking for value, looking for worthiness, looking for someone to see me. And that began a journey of just sexual immorality and still being in the church every Sunday and trying to figure out where I fit in the world. And so wound up getting pregnant twice in high school, had miscarriages both times. My parents never knew about those pregnancies. And then got pregnant a third time my senior year of high school. Now, I'm a high school valedictorian. I'm class president. I have scholarships to go to colleges all over the country. Like there's this future that's planned that's bright, and yet I'm secretly carrying a child. And kind of just thought maybe it would go away if I ignored it, and didn't really know what to do. No prenatal care, no conversation with parents. And finally told my dad, I was 17. I just graduated high school, and he told me to have a nice life and kicked me out of the family home and wound up having nowhere to go. I wound up living in the back of a car for a short season until a family in town took me in. And I lived there for a while and then wound up moving into the projects and got on food stamps and welfare. So my twin sister goes off to college. I'm separated from my family. I'm separated from her for the first time since birth. And my high school boyfriend went away to college. His plans were not hindered in any way. And give birth to this son and had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't even remember having held a baby before I had my son. And so just struggling. There are not, there's no website you can Google. Like this is before the web is even super popular. You're just out here struggling. And then my boyfriend came home on college break and I got pregnant again. And the shame that that pregnancy brought on me and how could I do this again? And so I hid that pregnancy for many, many months.
Now, how far apart in age were your children?
They are 17 months.
17. Wow.
17 months.
Age, yes.
And so I thought I can't tell anyone about this second child because the few people who have taken a chance on me. And I can remember I didn't even tell my employer until could not hide it any longer.
You said earlier about if I just ignore it, it'll go away. That is one thing that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
No,
So.
absolutely not.
I've since learned.
Hangs around for many, many years.
Yeah, exactly. But those days were so hard. I had no money. I had no friends. Most of my friends had gone away to college, or I was very ostracized from them because my life looked very different. Ostracized from my family completely. And felt very ashamed to go back to the local church.
Did you have any kind of outside help at all? Like, I mean, with your dad, no, but like, who was the mother figure in your life at that time?
No one for a long time.
Really?
And so I will say this, when I look back, I can see that the Lord positioned people in my life through the years. So for example, when I made the decision to go back to church out of extreme desperation, like maybe the church can help me. I'm broken. I'm hungry, physically, spiritually. I have nothing.
Yes.
And it was really that desperate of a situation. I was suicidal on a bathroom floor and went to church hoping they would save me. But when I made the decision to go back to church, there was a Sunday school teacher who was teaching the adult class. And she had actually been the church secretary of my childhood church.
Wow.
And so she was a familiar face. She was a widow. Her husband, she was a younger widow. Her husband was a pastor who passed away unexpectedly. And so she was parenting 3 children. And so I can see how the Lord connected dots that I didn't recognize at the time. And then there were people who brought me a meal that I didn't know that the Lord was telling them. Like there was nothing in my fridge, bring me a meal type of thing. So there were always people where God was providing.
Yes.
And there was a woman who had taken me in when I was living in my car, and her family to this day, 27 years later, is a very special family to me. So
you're seeing the Lord bring connections together
Yes.
now that you look back on that.
Mhm.
And what I love about that is, like, you did not go to that church full of faith and like, God, I'm just trusting you. You, in essence, I would say maybe you were faithless. I'm desperate,
Yeah.
but I'm
Desperation.
faithless, but God is faithful
yeah,
through everything
absolutely.
that you face. And you get down the road and you realize that, God, you're faithful.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things during that season of my life is that I was so bitter and so angry and so broken that I couldn't see the faithfulness of God. And I know that there are people who undergo traumas of a variety of types.
Mhm.
You lose a spouse, you get cancer, you go through a divorce, you go through single parenthood, whatever the thing, and you can't see the hand of God in that moment, but it doesn't mean that he's not working.
Until you look back.
Absolutely. And I will
Mhm.
also say that this season of time in my life is what led to the development of the ministry that I run today, because understanding the critical component of the church and how it transformed my life. Like, I met Jesus at an altar every Sunday for probably a year. Now, I
Yes.
gave my heart to the Lord at 9 years old and understood very clearly at 9, remember the day that I walked down and understood the weight of my sin and understood my need for a Savior. So it wasn't that. It was the weight of the world from 13 on
Mhm.
that just pulled me away. And so this reacclimation back into the church with the shame and the battle of that, and how Satan is so masterful at convincing us that we don't fit in, that no one wants us there, that our sin is so much worse than anyone else's, is absolutely how he isolates. And so all of those things are now what I talk to single moms about every day. And really even what I teach the church on the things that worked well for the church when I was in that season, and the things that were really swings and misses that,
Mhm.
I can remember, for example, and it was such a small thing because the pastor's heart, who I still love to this day, was so pure. I was in a small church, probably 50 members thereabouts, and it was Mother's Day, and he wanted to honor all the mothers. And so, of course, we all stand, which is typical of that day. And he said, all the mothers come forward, and they had a basket with corsages. Again, a beautiful gesture. There was
Mhm.
nothing wrong with any of this. And so we're standing on the stage, and he says, okay, husbands, everybody come up and pin
Oh,
the corsage
no.
on your wife.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm standing on the stage in front of the whole church, and I'm, trying to figure out what to do. So do I discreetly leave the stage? Do I go get my own? My children were young and in the nursery, and so I wasn't going to have that. And so I really didn't know what to do. Well, the widow who was my Sunday school teacher, her daughter was a teenager, and she had gotten up and pinned hers on her mother. And that widow goes and gets one out of the basket and walks across the stage and pins one on me.
That's wonderful.
And so, but in the moment, the humiliation was great
Mhm.
because the enemy used it to only further solidify that I didn't fit in anywhere. And so those types of things of trying to think through the scenarios of what people may be experiencing, and thank God I had a resilience to just keep going, to
Yeah.
just keep coming
Yeah.
back, because I think there are times when we're so bitter and so angry that it can be the excuse. That could have been the excuse that I
Mhm.
used to stay out of the
To
church.
push back
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
isolate yourself.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's beautiful though, to see that she was led of the Lord
Mm-hmm.
and recognized and was there for you in that moment.
One of the things I love about your ministry is that you're making the awareness,
Mm-hmm.
but we say this a lot on this podcast. Back in the day, a single mom ministry really wasn't a thing.
Oh,
It was kind of like everybody wanted the perfect American family, husband, wife, kids, everybody smile, come to church. Might be stuff going on behind the scenes, but you came to church with your happy face on. And single moms, there really was not that thought. And, I know my mom was a single mom for about the first 18 months of my life until she met my stepfather who raised me. And to hear now the awareness that you bring and being able to step out and minister to single moms and let them know you do fit. There is a place for you. That's huge.
It is. And I think, I often say I'd love to work myself out of a job. Like I love that I would love for there to be a forever family and for there to never be, widowhood and there never to be divorce and all of those things. I would love that. But it's not the state of the union we're in. And we are in perhaps the most exciting and challenging time in the history of the world being developed and created to minister to the complex needs of the people that are under our care. And single mothers are no exception. It's complex, it's messy, it is multifaceted in every way, but you're seeing that in your church too. And so it's time to get our hands dirty. And get into the ugly things and bring hope there. And so I'm grateful now. I'm grateful for the season of homelessness. I'm grateful for the seasons of extreme abuse that I endured. I'm grateful for the season of single parenting that I was in for almost a decade, because God taught me things in the middle of the projects on a bathroom floor I would not have learned anywhere else. And he taught me things through the abuse I wouldn't have learned other places. And not that the Lord orchestrated those things, but they have been used as tools. He gave beauty where ashes once lay. And so
it shows of his faithfulness in your life.
Time and again, when I turned my back, when I didn't give him credit, his hand of faithfulness was always there.
He was still taking care of you.
Absolutely.
Through the lady at church and just in all kinds of different ways, he was taking care of you. That is wonderful.
And the end of the story is, I muddled through a lot of years trying to figure out how to be a good mom with no dad in the home, trying to figure out how to rub two pennies together to get, gas in the car to get to work. The emotional and, mental trauma. How do you come back from those things? And so I learned a lot, and I met my husband, and we wound up marrying and living happily ever after. We've been married now for 21 years, and he adopted my children. We share a third child. And so I kind of had the white picket fence and happily ever after in a lot of ways. But the Lord never allowed me to forget the moments on the bathroom floor and what it was like to feel unseen and unheard. And so I went to my local church some years ago, 17 years ago now, and said, I think I'm supposed to start a Bible study for single moms. And they gave me permission and had no idea what I was doing, was convinced I didn't know enough of the word.
Starting from scratch.
Yeah. I hope nobody asks me, where God came from, because that's going to be, like all these excuses. Yeah. All these excuses we use to not be faithful. But they said yes. And we started with 3 single moms in my living room, and grew very quickly in about 6 months to the largest ministry in the church. And still felt like I didn't know what I was doing. But what I didn't realize was God was giving me a template. I started putting Word docs together and started kind of putting together this template that now has been used, 2,000 times in churches, of what works and what doesn't. And we've tried everything that didn't work. And so I think that was,
well, let me just tell you that you say, I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. I can just tell you that in the time, Lord, I do not know what I'm doing, but
Stepping
I
out in
trust
faith,
you,
yes.
and I'm gonna. You have to lead me 100% through
Yes,
this, so
absolutely.
That's what you are.
But that's every day now too.
Yeah.
I can remember sitting. I knew the Lord had given me a big vision, and I knew that even what He was placing in my heart was beyond Baton Rouge. But first of all, you hold those things close to your chest, because it's when the Lord gives you a word, it's not always for everybody. And so just kind of being in the place of faithfulness of just serving my local church, which I still do to this day.
Right.
17 years later, I'm still there every time we, I serve in a number of capacities, but every time we do a single moms ministry, I'm there. Even though the Lord's done this other thing, but here's what I know. Like there was nobody to meet with that had started a national ministry, like I would ask all the questions. And so it was a lot of God holding my hand saying, just do this today.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, as we look at, our ministry, in December served its 1 millionth mom. And
that's amazing.
It's unbelievable what God has done. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. But it's like, but I still need you today too, God. Mm-hmm. Yes, we've gotten some infrastructure things down. We've gotten some things down that we understand, but I still need you to show up today and show me what to do today. And what does it mean to surrender fully the ministry? I have held this ministry, I would say early on, very close and very tight-handed. And the Lord taught me what it was to hold it very open-handed. And so I hold the ministry at our local church very open-handed, fully submitted to the Lord, fully submitted to the pastors. This is their ministry. This is God's girls, not mine. And that's how I hold the life of a single mom. This is the season I'm in, is to serve faithfully. And maybe it's, 45 years or maybe it's 20. But whatever the season is, I'm going to do it well. And if God so chooses for me to pass the baton somewhere else down the road, I'll give it then and be faithful with the next calling, Yes. And I think that's probably a good word for everybody today.
When I think about this, that young lady on the floor of that bathroom, without a lot of hope in your life, if you could probably look down the road and see where you are and all the single moms that you would minister to, in that moment, you probably would have said, there's no way.
Yeah.
It's that I don't see myself doing that. There's no way that'll ever happen. But what I like about all this is that there's hope, that God has a plan and a purpose for you that you may not ever even be able to see. But as long as you say, God, I'm willing, whatever you have in front of me, and you said this a moment ago, I'm going to do it faithfully and to the best of my ability. I'm just going to trust you. Mm-hmm. And so thinking of that young lady on that floor to where you are now, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And what a powerful testimony this has been that can help so many women. And we hope our listeners, that this is ministering to them as well. I mean, that is just amazing what God has done in his faithfulness that's been shown. I'm really curious though, as you're ministering to these different moms, are you seeing more that are single moms who are divorced, or single moms who are widowed, or is it a mixture? Or are you able to minister to all situations that lead to single parenthood?
I think when I first started, I thought I would probably minister to teen moms. That's what I had been. And so I thought that was what it would look like. And what I have seen is that the journey is the same. And it doesn't matter if the mom is 45 and divorced, whether she's 61 and parenting grandchildren unexpectedly by herself, whether she's a widow, never married. It really doesn't matter the age. The story's the same. I want to be a good mom. I'm trying to figure this thing out, and my parenting, finances, and emotional and spiritual health are all problems. They are all things I've got to navigate. And I found that even with moms who were middle or higher income moms, if they had transitioned from a 2-income home down to a 1-income, the story was still the same. Now, some may clean up better than others on the outside, but the hurt is there, the pain is there, the challenges are still there. And so what the Lord did was, I would say, on a Friday night over across town in Baton Rouge, you've never been to a more diverse setting than the Single Moms Ministry that I still run. I mean, you have every socioeconomic, every racial, every age group representation there, and every story, and yet they continue to come and gather. And it's because they want to be great moms. All of us want to be great moms. Even moms who aren't great moms want to be good moms. Yes. They just don't know how. And so God has allowed that diversity to be there in order for us to help these other churches that may look different than the one that I serve in locally. And it's been amazing to see how natural and organic friendships form that are with peers, but also with those that are a little further along. So maybe you've been parenting alone for 10 years and you just naturally begin to mentor that girl that's just in this season. And that's been exciting too, because that's God's design for our life.
Yes.
Okay, so how can the church flow in with this? So when I talk about the church, I'm talking about, at your church, our church, we've worked with single moms, but maybe some of our listeners are saying, hey, I'm at my church and they don't have a single moms ministry. Would you encourage them to go talk to their pastor about possibly a Bible study or reaching out to your ministry? How can a church come alongside of their single moms, or just an individual say, hey, I want to be able to do something?
Yeah.
What are some ways that?
There's two things. I would say if the church doesn't have a single moms ministry, yes, reach out to us. Because one of the things, if you're a lay person, you don't necessarily always understand your church's infrastructure. And I didn't. I put together, I laugh now because I didn't understand how terrible this was, but I just have to tell you, my personality type is organized and think through, and I think in strategy. And so I put together this bound notebook that I went and had printed and, went to a church meeting and I passed it out to the 5 people in the room. Well, I had no idea that would be seen as like, hey, she's coming to try to take over the world here, So that was the corporate America side of me, right? So one of the things we do is really work with lay people to teach them how to approach their pastors. What is honoring? What does your church infrastructure look like, which can vary widely by denomination or church size. And then teaching them how to be patient in the wait, because we talk with a lot of lay people who are super frustrated because they feel like the Lord gave them vision to do a single mom's Bible study or ministry, and the church said no. And so we work with them on how are you patient in the wait and honor your pastors?
And that's a blessing. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of times, as pastors, you get a lot of ideas. People have a lot of things that they want to be able to do in the church. And sometimes you have the mindset of this is a great idea, but it may not be the right season for it.
That's true.
And you want to be able to pray about it. You want to be able to take it to the Lord. And when the season is right, okay, let's talk about this. So I'm glad to hear you talk with them about
Absolutely.
that.
And I think the other thing is sometimes the person approaching you is not the right leader. And so we get the phone call from the person who the pastor has said no or wait, and we have to discern, is this someone where there's a coaching opportunity for us to raise her up in her faith, for us to teach her what it is to lay down the bitterness that she's operating in, or whatever the thing is the pastor might see. And so that's a whole series of ministry before they ever decide to launch the church. And then beyond, obviously there's a process to getting it launched, but let's say that you're don't want to launch one, or maybe you've gotten that no and you just have a heart for moms. What can you do in the interim? We've put together a number of documents, like 50 ways you can serve a single mom, that are very practical in nature. For me, when my 2 older children were small, this is such a small thing, but it was everything for me. I would work sometimes 10, 12 hours a day, and then would need to grocery shop, whether it be on the weekends or that evening. And I can remember going to the grocery store with these 2 littles. I would put them in the buggy, and just getting out of the store was a thing. Like I'm trying to pile groceries around them, and I'm trying to keep them all wrangled together. And I remember being exasperated because I was embarrassed, the toddlers trying to climb out of the buggy and run around. And so I felt like I didn't have control. And I was exhausted. And we were leaving the grocery store one time, and my son knocked a thing of mayonnaise, and it was a glass jar on the ground as I had just checked out, and mayo went everywhere. And it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Y'all, I kid you not, I started sobbing and ran out of the grocery store and left my groceries. That's how overwhelmed I was. Thank God an employee ran after me and put the things in my car. But so if someone would have said, hey, I'll grocery shop for you. Give me a list of what you need. And not only will I grocery shop for you, but I'm going to pay for it. Now, obviously, there's Walmart pickup and all the things, but those things weren't even an option then.
No, not at all.
And so those, babysitting, when I had someone watching my children, I was at work or I was in college at night. There wasn't like a day.
Not to go have a fun time.
Oh, that would have been unheard
like
of. And so having someone that would be willing to just watch the kids for a couple of hours for me to do nothing, not so that I could go and run errands or whatever. So those are small things, but, baking for me, cooking for me, just all the things that people already naturally are gifted at doing.
Yes.
Are the things. And I'll also say this, a lot of single moms are doing an amazing job, and they are working 2 jobs. And I don't want to paint this picture that every mom's destitute and desperate. She's not. But even those moms,
they need a break.
They need a break.
And they need to be ministered to.
They do.
And just the thoughtfulness, the little, hearing the little heart drop of, hey, let's go help, this neighbor or this person is important.
I'm sitting here thinking they may not have the idea of, hey, we need to, go grocery shopping, but if you watch my kids, I'm going home to take a nap.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Or send her a card in the mail, or
Just some act of thougfulness.
yes. Yeah.
Towards them.
It's
I
so
like
important.
It's
a lot.
practical and it's simple. Just a way to be able to be thoughtful and to help. Hey, we'll watch kids for a couple hours for you to be able to catch up on errands.
Or to bring a meal,
or grocery
anything
shop,
like
or a
that.
meal. Which I talk about that quite often from the pulpit whenever I talk about serving. Like, hey, if the Lord lays it on your heart to take a bag of groceries or two to a single mom, do it.
Yeah.
Pay for it and take that to her. And it's just a practical way you can help.
It is.
Right.
And they need support financially. And so there are times where, give her slip $100 bill in her, and there's a lot of, moms don't want you to know that they need help because they don't want to appear like they don't have it all together. And so I
They
can
guard
remember-
their privacy.
Yes.
I've
And
seen
so
that.
don't ask them, do they need help? Just assume they do.
Just
do it.
Yeah,
do
and
it.
or drop it in their mailbox with anonymously. It doesn't have to be a big thing, and it doesn't have to be. For me, a lot of times it felt cloaked in shame. It just, for all the shame I was dealing with, it made me feel like, oh, it's one more thing I can't provide for my children. And again, the Satan was doing a number on me. But when it was anonymous, I spent it anyway.
That's right. That's right.
And so just those things that let them know they're valued and seen. And another thing is, from a church perspective, put them in places where they can serve, where their skills and talents can be utilized. Because I think sometimes there's this component of them being ostracized from the church. They have things they can bring to the
They have
church too.
giftings
They're
as
not,
well.
three-legged animals. It's like they have skills and talents and things that they can bring. And for me, a lot of times my servanthood gave me a place to have value.
Yeah, and connection with others, and that's important. Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question here, and it may be throwing you a curveball, but I've heard this, and I know you're focused on single moms, but there's talk of the amount of single dads in a congregation that are growing, and we see that somewhat at our church. I know we have far more single moms, but there are single dads that come to the church. Are you seeing an increase in that?
We are seeing an increase. There's a few things that I would say. We do get the question more than we did probably 10 years ago. And there are many dynamics as to why. Drug use is certainly one, and probably the most prevalent that we see, where addiction has entered the home. And so, we see a dad parenting alone. There's a couple things I would say to the church when they have this question. Number one, we have gone where the Lord's called us, where the most need is. And overwhelmingly, that's in the single mother-led home. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that need to be taking place for a single dad in the church as well. And so some things we've suggested to churches are do a single mom's Bible study, do a single dad's Bible study, and then organically do some barbecues or some things, regularly for them to fellowship together. But we do recommend that they stay separate, because the way men and women fellowship is different. And you guys know that the complexity of bringing in a bunch of singles that maybe haven't healed completely can be a whole nother challenge for the church.
Well, I know in times past, like we had men's meetings, breakfasts, things of that nature, and we've offered childcare. And a lot of times what happens, a single mom might push back and say, well, I don't feel like I'm not a part of that. A single dad will come and he just interacts with the dads, and he doesn't necessarily maybe walk with the shame and all of that, because it's just like, hey, I'm in this place in life and it is what it is. I'm just going to do the best I can. So,
well, you just said something that's very important. You said we have a men's ministry and we offer childcare. That's a huge thing for men's ministry, because I've seen many churches where women's ministry nights always have childcare, but men's ministry nights don't. And so when you think about a single dad, because I think there's this assumption that, dads are just going to leave the kiddos home with mom, but it's a small way. Now, again, you may not need as much childcare, but it's a small way to let single dads know that they're seen and valued as well.
There's times we have offered childcare and times we haven't, because you may go a season where you don't have any single dads, but to be able to offer it, you're right, it's huge. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
Very important. Well, I want you to talk to a little bit more about the resources that you have. It's the Single Mom University that you have, and tell our listeners about that, and give us a little insight on the different ways that if there's a single mom listening, and she needs help in her her finances and helping all these different ways, that's a resource that's available, correct?
Yeah. So Single Mom University has 175 classes. There is not a single mom topic that you can think of that is not in the university.
I looked at it. It's a lot of topics.
I mean, we've got sex and dating. We've got overcoming abuse. We've got trauma recovery. We've got how to put a budget together. I mean, literally anything in the way of parenting, finances, and emotional and spiritual health, we've got it. How to pray to a God that you are convinced doesn't love you. Like all these things that are basics for a single mom of any season of life. So we went from averaging 1,000 women a year in that platform to now 5,000 women a year with a waiting list. And so moms can go on to singlemomuniversity.com. There's a fee, but all you have to do is apply for scholarship. We approve 100% of the scholarship applications. And so it's not, if you can't afford to pay and bless another mama that can. But if you can't, go and get in the university. And the cool thing about it is it's kind of like YouTube for single moms. They go in day or night. Instead of scrolling on Facebook, they can get in and get some life skills. Yes. And there's a chat room so they can talk to each other. And then there are discussion questions. So if you're leading a single mom's Bible study, you can facilitate discussion around any of the videos, but there's also additional optional learning and homework. So if they want to go deeper in a subject matter, they can. And so it's really as much or as little as they want each topic to be for them. A lot of work went into that, really a God vision, and amazing to see how the Lord has expanded it.
It's only been for a few years, correct?
Yeah, we're in our 4th year with it.
Okay. I knew it was new. That's amazing though, to be able to reach that many ladies.
Tremendous resources that are available. So where can our listeners, if they want to connect with Single Moms Ministry, they want to connect with you, where can they find you at?
TheLifeOfASingleMom.com is the quickest way. We have active social media every week, live chats. We've got, for the greater Baton Rouge audience, we have lots of local support, case management, licensed counseling, diaper distribution, clothes distribution. Like we have a lot of resources that we will provide to our greater Baton Rouge audience as well. So if they just go to our website, lots of info's there.
And then if there's anyone in the churches that are listening and they're like, we want information on how to start a Bible study or reach out to minister to single moms, they can connect at that website and get the help that they need. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Well, this has been great. I know our listeners have enjoyed it. Thank you for being with us today.
Yes. It's my honor.
And for sharing. Thank you for what you're doing to be able to minister to single moms, because it means so much. As I said, I know my mom, she wasn't a single mom for very long, about 3 years, but the length that I know was very challenging for her. And so, just so appreciate your heart for single moms. So you have anything you want to add?
I'm just excited about this conversation, and I know it's going to help a lot of single moms that are listening. So thank you for that.
Going to be a blessing to our listeners. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast today. And if you are liking what you're hearing, please like, share, subscribe, give us a review, tell us your thoughts. If there's an episode that you would like for us to talk about a particular topic, please add, put that in your review as well. And check out Life of a Single Mom's Ministry. I know it'll be a tremendous blessing to you. It's been a great time today, Jennifer, with you. And as always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.